At the start of this year, we, the Executive Council of the Barbados Workers Union, renewed our commitment to the ongoing fight against patterns of behavior that undermine the dignity of the worker. KFC was one of the companies targeted for our advocacy on the basis that it had been neglecting its obligations to its workers, their representatives, and the government and people of Barbados. During our advocacy thus far, an unenlightened few have accused us of bullying the company. Those people and others who think the way that they do seemingly could care less about the workers who for too long have been marginalized by unfair treatment and unfair terms and conditions of work. Today, on this day when we celebrate love, relationship, and friendship across the world, we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you to those members of the public who continue to support us in our advocacy for the improved well-being of all workers and their families in Barbados. We also want to say thank you to the other divisions of the Barbados Workers Union who stood ready to lend their solidarity in the way we know how to do it to this cause. But most of all, we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you to the workers of KFC, both past and present, who have stayed the course with us in the fight for improved conditions over the years. Today, because of your commitment, steadfastness, and solidarity, we believe that we have broken new ground to advance industrial relations with this particular employer. Whilst we acknowledge that the journey is not yet over, today we have renewed courage. We have renewed courage to fight till the full light of day. We are therefore very pleased to announce the following gains that were concluded and agreed to just 2 days ago. Workers at KFC, with effect from the work week commencing February 16th, will now have a guaranteed 40 hours of work for all workers. What does this mean for KFC workers? This was a condition last enjoyed over 35 years ago. 35 years ago, when the company was experiencing a certain kind of pressure due to a controversy that was at the national level at the time. Some of you may not be too young to remember when Red Plastic Bag sang Pluck It in 1989. It was that particular controversy that saw the fallout come into the company and the union agreeing to waive the workers' rights to 40 hours. And this was done to avert any fall off in terms of terminations. It was done against the backdrop of a commitment to that when things improve, the company would restore the 40 hours. 35 years later, and we are now seeing the restoration of 40 hours. What does this mean for workers? It means that with 40 hours guaranteed pay, they can more easily secure better quality of life for themselves, including access to credit that will help them to purchase houses, things for their household, and so on. This is a big win for workers. The second win, around that time too, the company and union agreed to restrict the permanent workforce to 51 employees. One would recall that at the time there were very few KFC outlets compared to now. At least we have some 15 outlets now employing over 500 workers. At that time, KFC employed just about 100. So we agreed to keep the permanent complement to about half. The company has since improved but neglected to keep faith with our agreement and kept that permanent number at 51. Today, we are pleased to announce that due to very fervent negotiations and through very steadfast commitment of our employees at KFC, that number of 51 will no longer exist. All workers will become permanent on completing probation. This brings us to win number 3, probation. For perhaps all of my union life, not perhaps, definitely all of my union life, which is over 21 years now, the Barbados Workers Union throughout all that time and before, have been fighting the company on a training policy that saw it employing people for 1,820 hours before they can even start a period of probation. What that meant is that workers had to work 19 months at least before being confirmed in probation. That is, if the company didn't get rid of them before. Under our new agreement, the whole idea of 1,820 hours is off the table as a training period. We found it obscene that workers would have to train so long to learn the difference between a zinger and a chicken breast sandwich, or to learn the difference between a corn and a cobbett. Now, due to our agreement, there will be a probation period of 3 months, and within that 3 months, training will take place for one of those 3 months, at the end of which time, workers can be confirmed in their positions. What is also very important about this probation period is that sometime unilaterally in the past, the company determined that the training rate should be the minimum wage. This was never agreed to by the union. And on top of the cancellation of the ridiculous 1,820 hours, workers now have the opportunity to come in and train at a unionized rate. That is the rate that is granted to the general worker. All of these changes combined give workers as much as 56% increase on top of what they're earning now. And the fact that workers have the 40 hours along with the waiver of the training period means that they have the 40 hours, an additional 13 hours, and an additional hourly amount that boosts their overall take-home pay. Which brings us to win number 4. Win number 4 is for those workers who specifically work as cashiers. For those workers, they will now be restored in terms of remuneration to the level that cooks currently enjoy. This was something that had obtained in our collective agreement before time. That is, before 5 years ago, when the company determined that cashiers should be termed customer team members or something to that effect and have a reduced pay of almost $6 per hour. Today, or I should say 2 days ago, we no longer have to worry about that because with effect from February 16th, workers who work cash will be remunerated at the same level as a cook. Therefore, we are seeing the restoration of over $6 per hour to workers working cash. Now, this brings me to the final one. And this, for us, brings it all together because on top of those conditions that we have announced, win number 5 will see every single worker, irrespective of the category that they're working on, and on top of all of the increments that are now going to be restored to them, they will see them getting a wage increase. A wage increase that takes effect from June 12, 2022, a wage increase of 9%. So that means on top of the movement back to a 40-hour work week that will see most workers at KFC moving from 27 hours a week to 40. We see now the restoration of the cashier rate of pay, which would mean an additional $6 for those who work in that category. The removal of the training period means that workers can be confirmed and become permanent at the end of that training period, therefore meaning that all the benefits that come along with permanence, sickness, benefits, and so on, will become available immediately to those workers from work week beginning Sunday, February 16th. I have no doubt that there are some who will hear about all of these increases and the improvements that have been restored. And I stress on restored and not gained because these are things that were lost over time. They will hear about these conditions that have been restored and think that it might be a little too much for the company to carry all at once. However, I want us to consider that sometimes to restore trust, huge steps are required, particularly when trust has eroded to the point where exploitation of the worker to the overwhelming advantage of the employer is most evident. The Executive Council of the Barbados Workers Union regards this as a solid basis upon which we can now move forward with the company on behalf of the workers of KFC, especially given the evidence for much of the last 30 years which suggested otherwise. However, the public of Barbados, you are members of the Barbados Workers Union, and particularly our members at KFC, can rest assured that during the period of this 30 years to 35 years of struggle for these fundamental rights, we have learned some very valuable lessons. Among the lessons learned are, one, even where it is possible to restore trust, we will not likely be deceived again. Lesson two, we must always exercise due care when entertaining good faith relations. We entered a good faith agreement in 1989, and we are now getting much of the benefits restored, even although conditions improved to the extent that they could have been restored over 25 years ago. Lesson three, solidarity and steadfastness will at times be accompanied by pain, at times be accompanied by long suffering as we pursue our mission, but we must never give up. Lesson four, ever since I became General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union, I have been urging workers in most of my public addresses that talk alone does not always work. Workers must reach the point where they are willing to match their words with their actions, where things like enough is enough, it's about you, bet who bet you, cannot be just words. The most important lesson, lesson number 5, is that nobody listens to weaklings. Whenever the Barbados Workers Union comes out on an issue, there is always a principled underpinning that we commit to following through on until we win for our members. Strike action remains the method of last resort. But when at its 80th conference, the Barbados Workers Union committed to reset, we recognized that we were committing to a very large extent to doing things differently. This we have done, and we will not apologize for this, because apologizing would simply suggest that we are yielding to those who have become uncomfortable by what they may consider a new approach by the Barbados Workers Union. But we will speak more on that at another time. Workers at KFC, workers in Barbados, now is the time to strengthen our base to ensure that we keep companies' feet to the fire. With love and solidarity, we remind you it's about you. With courage and determination, we encourage you to bet who bet you. And today, again, we reiterate that unity is strength. On behalf of the Barbados Workers Union, staff and council, we say to you, workers of Barbados, we love you. Happy Valentine's Day.